Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Music Podcast, where today, sitting in with me, the legendary Steve Mann. Thank you so much, Steve. Steve has had a successful 50-year career in music as a guitarist, keyboardist, songwriter, producer, engineer. You do everything for you. Recording and performing with some of the world's very best musicians. He has been a member of glam rock legend Sweet, as well as the Michael Schenker Group and the McAuley-Schenker Group, of course, and of course Lionheart, we are going to focus on today because they are preparing for the release of their latest record, The Grace of a Dragonfly, which will be available on Metalville Records on February 23rd. Steve, so great to have you here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for the very great introduction there, Scott. For a 35-year-old, a 50-year stint in the business is pretty good.
Yeah, yes, there you go.
No, 35. Well, there goes my nose again. Great to talk to you, Scott. Great to be here.
It's great to have you. It's great to have you, and so much great stuff you've done too.
Thank you.
I mean, you do it all, and it's I want to ask you, do you feel most comfortable in any one thing? Are you a guitarist that does other things? Are you a keyboardist that does these other things? Or, where do you feel at home? Is there one particular place?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one that I have to think about, because yes, I always consider myself to be first and foremost a guitar player. And when I was 15 and I bought my first electric guitar, it was, I mean, like a lot of other guitar players, it was absolute love at first sight. It changed my life. And, that's since then, that's all I've really, really wanted to do. I have a kind of divided brain. I mean, my one side of my brain is very logical and, likes technical things and reading manuals and stuff like that. Yeah. The other side of my brain is the creative, artistic side. And I have to satisfy both parts of my brain. And I find that what I do with engineering and producing and mastering and programming keyboard sounds and stuff like this keeps that side of my brain very active and satisfied, if you like. But the other side of the brain, the creative, artistic side, is always knocking at the door saying, hey, don't forget me. You've got to, channel me out as well. And so to answer your question, I would say, first and foremost, I am a guitar player. I lovely guitar playing. That's my main form of expression. And I kind of feel fortunate that I have my other half of the brain that allows me to put that down in the studio and do all the, the recording and the overdubs and the mixing and all the other stuff that comes with it.
Yeah, we're thankful too.
That makes me happy. I'm glad you said that.
Very much so. Now, you started as a keyboard player, correct?
No, I started very young. Going back that far, yeah. I started when I was 7 years old, and my brother, who's 5 years older than me, I had to do everything that he did, and he was going for classical piano lessons, and so I said I want to go as well, and so I had 8 years of classical piano lessons, which taught me music theory, harmony, obviously, playing piano and playing keyboards. It gave me a really, really good basis for the theoretical side. And it was when I was 15 years old, there's a great story. I went down to a bargain center in a place called Southall, which is close to Hamwell, which is where I lived at the time. And I saw this guitar on the wall, and I could have sworn it was the Strat. I didn't know about Stratocasters; it was just a guitar, and I thought it was the guitar on the back of the Layla album. And I'd heard these great stories about classic, amazing guitars being found in bargain centers, and I was absolutely convinced that that was the guitar on the back of the Layla album. So I bought it and took it home and realized it was completely different. I fell in love with it anyway. And that turns out I've had many, many guitars since. And that very first guitar was the only guitar I ever sold. And I've regretted it ever since. I've been trying to get it back over the internet, but I've been unable to trace it. But from that day onwards, when I bought that guitar, that was it. My love for guitar playing started.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, and there are guys. Are you a collector kind of person? Do you have many guitars that you pick and choose from, especially when you're recording?
I'm not a collector. Like I don't collect, records, and I tend to get rid of stuff that I don't need. But with guitars, I always have this discussion with my wife. She says, "You don't need those because you never use them." I say, "I do need them because I will use. If I sold them, I knew I'd find a use for that guitar as soon as I
You can
sold
only play one at a time, right?
that's what she says. So no, I have a collection of guitars, and I do, like one is strung as a 7 string, and one is detuned down to D, and one has a high action, so I use that for bottleneck stuff. I have my beloved Nemesis, which was built for me, which I use for nearly everything. I have a Flying V, which I use because I just love the sound of Flying Vs. So yeah, I do collect guitars, but for very pragmatic, practical reasons rather than just being a collector.
Yeah, excellent. How many guitars do we hear on this record? On
You
Grace of a Dragon.
hear three. I think there's the
Okay.
Flying V, there's a Nemesis, and I use the Strat for a lot of the clean picking sounds.
Okay.
So I think it was just three, possibly the Charvel four, but it's certainly at least three of the guitars. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean there are some guys who, there's a different, three different guitars on each song,
Yeah, I know a couple of guys like that.
Yeah.
Naturally, no names.
Absolutely. Um, I talked with Dennis about the writing of the record, and he mentioned having you in your studio during the lockdown was a real bonus. Do you think the album is a bit more elaborate because of that time? There's this album has so many beautiful guitar harmonies,
Mm.
so many beautiful vocal harmonies. It is an elaborate record. It
Yeah.
is a record when you listen to it, it feels full and like it took years to make.
Mm.
Is that kind of elaborate sound? Does that have a lot to do with the extra attention maybe that you were able to give it?
Yeah, I suppose it does. I mean, we didn't make it elaborate because of the time,
Right.
but having the time allowed me as a producer to become elaborate. And so I was doing an interview earlier that where I was explaining that um, I'm one of those people. I don't just kind of do verse bridge chorus, solo, middle eight, and then the end choruses. Things have to develop, and I kind of see it very much as a kind of tapestry, if you like. Every song is like a tapestry. So I will do things like making the first bridge a little longer so it hangs a bit before it goes into the chorus. Second bridge won't be as long. It'll just be a little bit shorter. Like it won't repeat the last line, for example, will go straight into the chorus. The riff in the middle of the chorus might be slightly different from the first time to the second time. Not because I'm trying to be clever, but because I just think it subconsciously people are aware that it's actually done something different. So as you listen to the song a few times and you get to know it, you start to associate uh, kind of little riffs or little kind of ways of doing things, or a stop before the chorus rather than going straight into it. You might kind of start to associate those with the various parts of the song. So each part becomes a little piece in it. So it doesn't become so different that you don't recognize it as a bridge or recognize it as a verse. But there's just a little step up each time. So it kind of progresses. And I think that's why it became elaborate. We're not doing an ELP or Genesis or anything like that, where we just, put, or Yes, where we put these complicated bits in because it's fun to put them in.
Right.
I do it as a producer very much to try and build the songs and keep the interest there.
Yeah, and it does. I mean, and they are, they're anything but simple, but
Mm.
structures are fairly common,
Mm,
where it's easy to follow. It's not, it's very accessible.
mm.
Unlike something like Yes, where, you have to pay attention.
Yes.
You really have to analyze, and that has to be your thing. This
Yeah.
is a very accessible, melodic rock record. Uh,
Yes.
it's just a beautiful listen. I
Thank you.
love this record. Really
Yeah.
do.
Well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Would it be a concept record if you didn't have that time? Is it easier to do a concept record as you're writing too? Is it because you're restricted to a certain theme or
Mm.
a story? Does that hinder you as a writer, or does that open you up a little bit?
I think it probably opens you up because you, as you say, you have a direction. We're very fortunate in having Lee Small as our singer because he's a very, very creative person and he writes lyrics um, that I always kind of feel are big and colorful. They're not clever, they're not kind of, he writes in prose very often and it's a very elegant way of writing, but they are big, colorful lyrics that are very descriptive and create this beautiful for me anyway, this beautiful picture in your head as you're listening to the lyrics.
Mhm.
And so he was very keen on the idea of doing a themed album. We don't call it a concept album because there's no story from beginning to end, but it's a themed album. And it's themed obviously on war and in particular the Second World War and our aversion against war, I have to add.
Right.
And so these lyrics just seem to flow from him. So I think in terms of writing the lyrics for Lee, it was very inspirational. For me, it was also, I think when I was writing the backing tracks for this, I kind of always had this feeling of, yeah, this is the theme that I'm writing for, and it helped with the creativity. So I didn't start with a blank canvas. I started with a canvas that already had these pictures on it within which I was working. So I think generally, to answer your question, yeah, it helped.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I wouldn't always think that because, like I say, you have parameters to work within.
Mm,
It doesn't allow you an extreme amount of freedom, but it
mm,
also limits that palette, like you were saying, where
mm,
it's a little more focused. It's very
mm,
interesting. Dennis Stratton, you have on the other side holding a guitar. There is a lot of harmony here,
mm.
both vocally and with the guitars, which I absolutely love. Dennis, an amazing player. You're on this side. He's on that side. How do you choose? How does that writing come in? Where do you write particular parts for each person? Is there a rule book that you stick to each time? Is there a formula? That has to be a challenge when you
Mm.
have two great guitar players that are both melodic and can play lead. Um, how do you do that? Where does that start?
Well, I love that whole Iron Maiden feel. I
Right.
mean, I'm not the biggest Iron Maiden fan in the world, but I love what Dennis contributed to Iron Maiden. I thought it was very, very identifiable. He's got a very identifiable sound. So as soon as you hear old Iron Maiden records, you know immediately when Dennis is playing,
Yeah.
and I love that start. It kind of takes me right back to the beginning of the '80s. So um, I tend to. I mean, Dennis is kind of quite happy if I kind of write the harmony parts and then just send him his part and then he plays it. And so I have this kind of thing in my head that I can hear what he would do with a part like that anyway. And so I very often kind of write the parts and then send Dennis his part. He comes back and we have very similar vibratos, very similar styles, and quite similar sounds. So our two guitars blend very well together. So we can do a lot with that, so we can do a lot of up-to-date stuff. We can do a lot of stuff that is kind of Iron Maiden style. And then he'll take a solo and that solo is for me is pure Maiden. And I just say to him, just do it, just get that Iron Maiden influence in there, because
Yeah,
we have a lot of Iron Maiden fans in our
sure.
target market anyway, in our fan base. So just I mean, you're the guy that did it in the first place, so
Yeah.
you've got every right to do that. Bring that Iron Maiden influence into Lionheart as well. So that actually works out very, very well. Just to extend that argument slightly, Rocky did a lot of the backing vocals on the Def Leppard Hysteria album.
Okay.
And a lot of people say, aren't you worried that it makes you sound like Def Leppard? And our argument is, no, Def Leppard sound like us, because he's our bass player and our singer. Thank you very much.
Right.
If Def Leppard borrow him to do their record, that's their problem.
Yeah, but see, that's the great thing about this record and this band. You have all of this melody and harmony.
Mm,
It's just
mm.
it's really delightful listen. It really, really is.
Thank
Um,
you.
you say you guys are stylistically similar,
Mm,
yourself and Dennis. That's easier. That's another question. Like the concept to not, or the theme without the, or not the theme. Uh, if you had somebody who was very different from yourself, that would be more difficult to write for.
yes, I mean that.
Okay.
I used to be in a band called Titan back in the early 1980s,
Mhm.
and the other guitar player was the complete opposite to me. He used to play these kind of really fast runs and noises, and it was great. Really nice to listen to. Um, but it was completely different from the approach that I took, which was much more melodic and tuneful, and probably had more was based more on the music theory of what the chords were doing behind it. That's the way I've always been.
Right.
So the approach that we took was completely different. We never did stuff together. Either he did a solo or I did a solo, and it worked really well because the two styles were so different.
Right.
But it was a different kettle of fish completely to what we do
Yeah.
in Lionheart. And with Lionheart, because we do have this symmetry, Dennis on the right or stage left and me in stage right, um, and our sounds and our styles and our vibratos are so similar, then obviously there's a lot more working together. But if Dennis had have been a completely different guitar player, then the approach would have been different. But
Yeah.
then I don't think we'd be doing Lionheart albums anymore, because Lionheart is all about melody.
Yeah.
We've always done guitar harmonies. We've always done three-part vocal harmonies, and that's what we're known for. That's what we all love in the band. And I don't think there would be a Lionheart if we weren't able to do that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I thought Dennis, with Iron Maiden, a little sidetrack here, brought in that kind of Wishbone Ash-ish kind of harmony guitar thing to that
Mm,
band. And I
mm.
think it's still that influence is still there today.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
it really, they bridge that gap for me because
yes.
I'm an Ash fan, and I always liked it a little bit heavier maybe.
Mm,
This was Ash heavy, and I think Dennis brought that.
yeah.
So the album starts off with a song called Declaration. Uh, that heavy breakdown reminds me of Love to Love when I first heard it, the
Mm,
beginning of it, where the heavy breakdown in UFO's Love to Love,
mm,
similar to Declaration. So it was that little touch, kind of like you hear a little Maiden from Dennis.
mm,
And then I heard the Longest Nights solos, that
mm.
trade off, and it reminded me of Gorham and Robertson, which
Mm.
is huge for me. And I know you were in a band with Scott Gorham, correct?
I was indeed. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah. Fast Buck was that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
back in 19, whenever it was, 74.
Okay. So these different influences, and you're playing with Michael and doing these things. Is there one particular band that you've come across or grew up with that influences the way you write and your style, the way you play?
The way I write songs, my influences tend to be classical. I listen to a lot of classical music during the day, and I listen to Rachmaninoff and Bach and Mozart, and their chord changes or their progressions tend to influence me a lot. And on the last album, there was a track which was the one about the man on the moon. I've forgotten the name of the track. I'll look it up actually. It is what was it? It was on it was The First Man, it was called. That's right. It was about the first man on the moon. And the chorus of that was directly taken from Rachmaninoff. And no one has noticed. But I tend to do a lot of that, is in taking stuff. And I think that's been my influence as a songwriter.
Okay.
So there's no other kind of real songwriters where I think I'd like to write like him or write like her. And with guitar playing, I think, I've had so many influences over the years. I tend to hear a guitar player, and then that will be my influence for that week. And I think slowly, bit by bit, you kind of start to all of these influences, and there's been dozens of influences with me, all start to kind of melt together in a big pot. And then, so your own sound then starts to kind of come out of all of that. And everything you play is taken from Gary Moore here, or Richie Blackmore there, or Alvin Lee, or whatever. But it's kind of all little bits that have stayed there. What has stayed in my own playing, I think, is the blues influence. And I grew up with the blues. I listened to Clapton a lot in the early 70s. Gary Moore, his blues album. And I listen to a lot of blues players these days as well. Walter Trout, people like this.
Oh, yeah.
So the blues has always been my kind of big influence, and I love to play the blues. And every now and then I'll put on a blues backing track and just jam along to it. So that stayed there. But my influences really are very wide and very varied. I think Dennis and I would both admit to Steve Lukather being a big influence.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. What doesn't he do, right?
I hate him.
Unbelievable. You and Robin McAuley, writing Anytime, which was huge, a big hit. You're a songwriter. Of course, it was McAuley-Schenker. Were you surprised at all that, especially after the success of Anytime, that you weren't tapped more when you were with Michael writing for the albums? Because there's not many of your songs on those records.
No. I think what happened was when we did the Save Yourself album, which was Anytime, which contained Anytime, that was the last album I did with the McAuley-Schenker Group, apart from Nightmare had been recorded on the Save Yourself sessions, but it went on the album after that.
Right.
So I kind of appeared on the album after that, but I wasn't technically in the band at that point. When I got back together with Michael in 2016, he kind of very much wisened up to the business side. He never really had a head for business, I think, right up until the 90s. And I think in the period of time where I wasn't in contact with him, he kind of wisened up quite a lot. And by the time it got to writing for these new records, he very much kept the songwriting to himself. He couldn't write lyrics and melodies, so he would always delegate that to the singers or the producer or whatever.
Right.
But as far as all the guitar parts and the chord sequences and stuff were concerned, he kept all that to himself. I mean, why not? There's a lot of money to be made in songwriting, and I think he realized that at that point. So there wasn't really any space for external songwriters to come in, apart from singers who would contribute the melodies and the lyrics.
Right. Yeah, and a little bit of a shame, I must say, as a fan, because I know you're a great songwriter, and that's obvious through this, and we would get more of those great songs. So, and Michael is, probably my favorite guitar player growing up. I just absolutely adore him and everything he plays. So,
Mm.
uh,
I have to say, Scott, going back to your previous question, that Michael is also an influence because
yeah,
I'm like you. I love his playing. I just
yeah,
think it is absolutely world class, sensational, blow your socks off stuff, and he gets a sound that like nobody else gets. And
yeah,
that has also, I mean, I think his sense of melody more than anything else has really kind of, I think, rubbed off on me. And I look for my own sense of melody as well because I just know how important that is.
yeah, yeah. And that was the thing with especially UFO and his solo stuff. But there was this, magic to these
Mm.
solos where you could sing them,
Yeah,
uh, but it was melodic but still heavy, and
yeah.
that's you're not always easy to do. And he's
No,
amazing. He's
I
amazing.
agree.
You and Robin McAuley, McAuley-Mann. Uh, is there a record out there somewhere? Did I miss something? Is there gonna be a record? We've been waiting.
I know it's I'm afraid I'm a very, very busy man. I'm involved in a
Good.
lot of projects and I do a lot of work and I love it. I spend a lot of my time in the studio,
It's good news. It's good news.
and I try to pace it with, taking breaks and having a weekend away every now and then. But I love my time in the studio. It makes me feel like a whole person. Um, and we started the McAuley-Mann album. It's probably about 2 years ago, and we've got two or three songs together already. Is a ways to go. We're hoping this year. Things are looking a little bit lightweight on the MSG touring front at the moment. So we're hoping this year is going to present a little bit more spare time for us so we can get together and really crack on with the album. So yes, it's coming. Sorry, it's not it's not come out before, but it is in the works and it will be appearing maybe later this year, maybe next year, who knows? But it's definitely coming.
Exciting, exciting. Yeah, no apology necessary. We get plenty of stuff from you and Robin. I know he's busy too. He's been
So
on.
same with Robin, exactly. That's
Yep, yep. He's on, every year, and we talk about his latest record. And I mean, he's productive, no doubt.
yeah, he
Uh,
certainly is.
is there a piece of music that you've done that you think defines you? Defines your playing and your style. If I was to say, and nobody had heard you before, and I was to say, this is Steve Mann, what would I play for them?
Okay, I think one of the solos I'm most proud of is on the single which is coming out this coming Friday, off the album, the Grace of a Dragonfly album. It's a song called "V is for Victory," and I think it also is probably close to being Lionheart's finest song. I love it on just about every level there is. I love the chords. I love what Lee did with the vocals. I love the words. I love the chorus is just, for me, it's just sensational. It's such a sing along chorus. It gives me goosebumps every time I listen to it. But
That's
the
awesome.
solo on it, I was extremely proud of, and it has elements of just about every aspect of my playing. So there's a technical side there. There's a melodic side there. I like the sound of it. I like the way it extend because for me a solo should always be an extension of what the vocal has been doing up to that point,
Mhm.
and it's not a showcase, an 8 bar or 16 bar showcase for how fast you can play or how many arpeggios you can get in. It should take over from the vocal and then carry on with the story that the vocal's been telling, and then pass the story back to the singer when the singer comes back in again. And
Mhm.
I think this solo does that really, really well. So I think if you're going to listen to a solo that I'm very, very proud of, that defines me as a guitar player and as a songwriter, then V is for Victory, which is coming out on Friday, is the song to listen to.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And it's great, after 50 some years of doing this, that you still get that kind of goosebumps and you get that excited about something
Yeah,
you do.
yeah,
That not everybody does, I think.
no.
So there is great joy, obviously, in your work, and that's great to see, great to hear. I want to respect your time. This has been great, Steve. One more question. You've done so much. You've worked with so many people. Is there something like a bucket list item for you that you haven't done in your life, either personally or professionally, that you'd like to do?
Yeah, I have a very large bucket with a list in it. I think, oh, that's a very, very good question. The one thing which is highly unlikely to happen, unfortunately, but it's still there, the chance is still there, is to play with a Beatle. There's only two left now. It doesn't matter which one. Well, it does matter. It would preferably be Paul McCartney. I think to just do a session or be on a record with, or something where I can actually say, "Hi, I'm Steve. I'm playing guitar on this." And years ago when Wings were running, I'd always envied Jimmy McCulloch. I always thought, I would love to be in his shoes.
Yeah.
So that's definitely on my bucket list. And if I could pick one thing out of everything in that big bucket, I think it would be that one, to play with a Beatle, preferably Paul McCartney.
Yeah, just crazy. Yeah. Boy, I think that's on everybody's bucket list. If you're
Yeah,
a
I think
player, it should
me and
be
everybody else.
It should be for sure. Steve, like I say, it's been a pleasure. It's a real honor to speak with you. I can't wait for everything you got. Whatever it is, it's always great. Lionheart's The Grace of a Dragonfly, February 23rd on Metalville Records, lionheartrock.com. It will be available everywhere. Steve Mann, thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you very much for your great questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, let's do it again on the McAuley-Mann record.
You got it. Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. Yeah, it's been great to talk to you.
You too. Take care, Steve.
Cheers, Scott.
All right. Bye bye.